slide over here to the website. So this is our demo account website. Every team that uses Kinship, you get a dedicated site where you can come and see the projects you're tracking, the content you're managing. You have the status board, which gives you some global metrics on your account, as well as access to Revit crash data. You can search all of your content here as well. If you're an administrator, you can come here to do things like manage your team members, your users, your company settings, account settings, and so on. So we're going to start by looking here at the library. So library and collections, these are really the two ways you have to manage content for your team. The library you can think of as content meant for general use. So it's content that will always be recommended to users searching in Revit, as long as it obviously matches their search terms and any filters they've applied. When you come to the library online, you start on this landing page that gives you quick access to different types of content like systems, components, annotations, details, your most relevant content, like this section is showing the newest and most recently updated families in the library. Additional types of content, groups, views and sheets, content that's pending approval. We'll talk more about that in a bit. This section is showing you the newest and most recently updated lists in your account. So these are those custom categorizations I was talking about a moment ago. I filtered down to that interiors list. So each of these files just shows a preview of the content on that list. If you're somebody who works on content in the library, so you're an administrator or what we call a content manager, then here you would see families that you've added or updated recently. We have a content health section that shows you potential issues with your library content. So another automated thing we do to help save you time, prioritize your resources, is we do a series of automated health checks on every piece of content that you add to your account. It's currently around 25 different checks. They're all just drawn from Autodesk standards for good usable project content. And here we're highlighting the top 4 that we found in your library. So if you wanted to see the 20 families that have non-native geometry in them, like CAD geometry, SketchUp geometry, you can click here to see those, or the 17 that have an image. You can click see all to see all 25-ish issues and how many families are affected by each. And you can decide which of these health checks you see or hide. So you can hide the ones that you don't care about or just aren't high priority for you. And then lastly, we have sections for disciplines and categories. So disciplines are the Revit defined disciplines. So within each of these, you would see the categories of content belonging to that discipline. And then lastly, category shows your top categories of content and an all categories button at the bottom. So from this landing page, you can quickly jump into the particular type of content that's most relevant to you. I'm going to click see all here on new and updated. And that will take us in to see our entire approved library just sorted by what is the newest and most recently updated content. So whenever you're looking at content in your account online, you can view it in a few different formats. Right now we're in a detailed view. We can switch to a basic view if we want to leave space for longer family names like this one, or go to a grid view if we want to navigate more visually with larger preview images. You can sort using the sort menu here by any of these values. You can filter using the filter menu here on the left. You click that button and filters appear for things like categories, manufacturer, content with different attributes, like if it has nested elements, Revit version, hosting, and list. And you can also search using this little magnifying glass button up here on the top right. When we're in the detailed view, we get these additional columns of information showing for each piece of content. So Revit version, file size, last updated, those are all pretty self-explanatory. I will take a moment to talk about these first 3 here, projects, instances, and modified. So projects is telling you how many total projects has each of these families been loaded into. Then how many instances have been placed across those projects, and what percentage of those have been modified from the original version here in the library. And Kinship is able to track basically any kind of modification somebody might make to a piece of content within a project. So it could be, you know, anything from modifying type parameters to adding, removing, renaming entire types, opening the family up in the editor and changing its geometry or other properties, or even renaming the family within the model. Basically anything like that, Kinship can track it. We'll reflect it here in the modified percentage. The only kind of change we ignore for the purposes of this value here are changes to instance parameter values, because those we consider to be something that, it's meant to be set at the instance level, but anything else we can track and will reflect here. So if I, for example, resort my library by instances, then I can see what content has been used the most by the team, how broadly, and how consistently. So that's what these first three columns are telling you, is about how the content is being used by the team on your project. Okay, then lastly, over here on the right, we have a load button. This lets you open content directly from the website into Revit, either to load it into a model or open it up in the family editor. And then lastly, this three dots button, we call it the More button. This shows you available actions you can take on the content. Most of these you would need to be an admin or content manager to do, like adding it to a list or collection, renaming it, unapproving it, or deleting it from the library. But if you have those permissions, then you can do those things. So I'm just going to jump into this family here and show you some additional information you can see about each piece of content in your account. So here on the family detail page, at the top, again, you have some of the same information as on the prior screen in larger text, a larger preview image. Now over here on the right, you have See Instances. So you can click this to go in and see exactly where the family has been used by your team. You can see the name of each RVT it's loaded into, the project number and project name that RVT is a part of, how many types from the family were loaded into that model, the current name of the family within the model. So like down here, you can see it was renamed to tea table from coffee table within this model. And you can see a preview image of the family again within the model. So if somebody modifies the geometry, changes materials, etc., you could see that reflected here in the preview. And then over on the right, you have a count of how many instances have been placed in each model and when the model family was last updated. In a live account, you could then click into any of these model versions and see their details, and that would include a history of what's happened with the family in the model. So who added it, who modified it, did what kind of modification, who placed how many instances. So if you really want to dig deep and see exactly how the content is being used by your team, with Kinship, it's really easy to do that. So that's the project instances page. Next, we have parameters. So I can click here to come in and see all of the parameters that are part of the family. They're listed here on the left and grouped the same way they are in Revit, like identity data, construction, materials, and so on. You can see which ones are standard family parameters versus shared parameters, formula-driven parameters. And then the columns show you the values for those parameters. So the first column defaults to showing the values for all types. So if all types share a value, we'll show you what that is. If different types have different values, you can click See All to see what those different values are. But you can also check and compare the values for individual types using these columns up to 3 different types and see what the differences are and if any information is missing. That's the parameters page. Files shows you the files that are part of the family. In general, that's going to be an RFA or RVT plus preview images for the different types. You can add any other kind of file you might want to have for supporting information, touch sheets, product catalogs, additional images, whatever. And you can also see deleted files. So if you ever update a family and something breaks or has the wrong information, you can use this to see previous versions of the family files and recover those. So you could always roll back to a previous version if something goes wrong. Next, we have history. This shows you a history of the family within the library, who did what, who added it, updated it, approved it, unapproved it, copied it elsewhere, renamed it, etc. So you have a full audit trail for all of your content. And then lastly, Revit versions. This shows you the different Revit versions that you have available. In this case, we have 3. You can compare some summary information on them, and you can click on any of them to see their particular detail. Then wrapping up this page, we have a section for types, shows you the name and preview image for each type, any comments that have been added to the family. If the family failed any of those active health checks, then you'll see those here in the health report section. So this is one of those families with non-native geometry. An information section with key identity data, and a list section showing any list that the family is a part of. And then again, back at the top, we have that load button and the More button with the available actions. The last thing I'll mention here in the library is the pending approval section. So content in the library can be either approved or unapproved. If it's approved, that means the team can see it here online and they can search for it in Revit. If content is unapproved, that means it lives here in pending approval. And this is basically an admin only section for admins and content managers as well. So this could be for content that is being created, content that needs to be reviewed and updated. It could be content that a regular user submits to the library, so users can suggest content, but it comes in as unapproved and requires an admin or content manager to approve it before the rest of the team can see it. So if I thought this cabinet shelf was ready to go, I could come here, click approve, confirm that, and it will disappear from this section and now be available to the team here and searchable in Revit as the newest family in the library, or vice versa. If I want to take something out of circulation, I just unapprove it, confirm, and it will go back into pending approval.